What's great, Tesla family? It's Bean J back with another video, and this time I need to separate what's the deal with Tesla, SPY, and several different tickers. Break down what's going on with the financial schedule hitherto, what's the deal with the general market, and a few vital things that emerged with CPI. Why the market's really dropping a little, what you ought to look for regarding the numbers. Before I separate anything, pretty much every one of the quantities of CPI and what this is meaning for Tesla and the business sectors, let me first say, I'm not a monetary organizer. Take nothing I say as monetary counsel. And afterward, remember about the Webull interface they're offering very soon. Assuming you store $500, you're insured 20 free stocks. In the event that you store $25,000 or more, you're insured 75 of them. Okay, so the deal is in 3 weeks. In any case, Tesla is plunging a little. SPY is as well. SPY is likewise down a lot, right now at $512 an offer. We saw this enormous plunge in view of CPI, and this is the way the numbers look up until this point. Taking a gander at the numbers, we really have them here. CPI year more than year was 3.5, a tad above what the assumption was, somewhat hot. We were expecting 3.4. We got 3.5% year over year. For month more than month, it was 0.4. That is over the assumption for 0.3. Center CPI was at 3.8, a smidgen above assumptions for 3.7. Then, at that point, center CPI month more than month was at 0.4, above assumptions for 0.4. And in this way, we got a fairly hot CPI report. Everything was somewhat more sultry than anticipated. Not the best of information. This is what the diagram resembles somewhere in this vicinity, as should have been obvious. For spring, we saw this expansion in all things CPI, and in any event, for all things without food and energy for center CPI, this went up only a little piece. Not the best of information, regardless, not the best of information for the Fed. We can see what wound up influencing this a ton. All things went up a tad month over month on the month-over-month premise. Food played an all-around job. We had different things somewhere in this vicinity. I'll discuss this perhaps somewhat later on, however, until further notice, simply realize that things were somewhat hot. In this way, for different things emerging, we are seeing the market plunge a little. The S&P 500 is taking the Dow Jones with the inflationary circumstance at the present time. There is some apprehension now about how the Federal Reserve will respond to this. I was taking a gander at the Federal Reserve site about how financing costs are being changed. I'm not exactly seeing a very remarkable change yet, and the site's sort of down, so I will stand by 2 or 3 hours before I show you all that once more for what the Federal Reserve is anticipating for rates. In any case, as of this moment, the Federal Reserve is in a position where they need to be somewhat favoring the hawkish side likely. They can't be too hesitant now thinking about that expansion is returning up, and they're not really free right now. The Fed can't begin cutting right away, they need to give it additional time. Thus, likewise, news coming out that Intel revealed its most recent artificial intelligence chip as it hopes to take a slice of the pie from the pioneer Nvda, which has an expected 80% of the market. That is vital. Intel is presently attempting to return and contend. Boeing conveyances fell in the primary quarter. They gave north of 83 planes in the 3 months finishing off with spring 31st, contrasted in 157 in the earlier quarter. That is something extremely fascinating. What's more, that Costco has struck gold in a real sense. The retailer has sold 100 bars made of almost 24K gold since the mid-year of 2023. So that isn't terrible at all. We're seeing significantly more enhancements, and that is extraordinary information for them. Thus, I simply needed to call out and discuss the primary titles. There's more information about Tesla. I will discuss all of this, including India and things like this, somewhat later on. Yet, for the present, simply realize that Elon Musk is wanting to meet Modi. I'll make one more video about that and separate more things about that. I simply need to zero in much more on the graphs to some degree until further notice. Anyway, what's the deal with the outlines now? How can things search in my closely held conviction? We should get going with Tesla then, at that point, separate covert operative and the others. So for Tesla, our obstruction is at 175 and furthermore at 175.8. That will be our 20 EMA and furthermore our opposition zone. And afterward for help, it's 173.9 trailed by 173 level. In the event that we lose 173, we're falling right down, as I would see it, to around 175. Assuming that bombs us 167.8 is coming. One thing we could say is that Tesla is still actually on an upturn. It's actually holding well contrasted with the market. Thus, Tesla's acquiring some strength since Elon Musk made that declaration about, the robo-taxi. Tesla is as yet showing more strength than the business sectors. It's not falling as hard as SPY and the Q and the others. Notwithstanding, I would like to take note of that there is a gamble of it dropping a smidgen more after the CPI report, particularly in the event that the market lets it fall down lower. In this way, ensure you watch that 173 help, and afterward keep a lookout on the off chance that we wind up drawing nearer to 170. There is a gamble of it plunging somewhat more, however it is yet showing some strength, so it probably won't implode and drop right down to like 165 or any such thing excessively fast. It ought to hold up much better contrasted with SPY and the others, yet know there's a gamble of somewhat more drawback due to how the market is looking. In this way, simply be exceptionally aware of that. What about SPY? It's actually plunging at present. There's no indication of this thing skipping. SPY got a little push to around 521. This was only a liquidity get. The explanation they siphoned by the day's end yesterday was on the grounds that they're preparing for this large drop. This was all essential for their game and all piece of their arrangement. Thus, SPY got an incredibly large drop right down to 512, and we're scarcely around 525 at this help. Our critical opposition, assuming that we really do split back up of 525, will be more like 514 to 515. Furthermore, on the off chance that we keep on losing 525, which is the thing we're doing at present, there is a gamble of it coming right down towards 510 territory, which isn't awesome of information basically for various financial backers out there. Thus, I could see it getting extremely near 510 coming to a skip, so only be ready for that as a sanity check. It's going to base ultimately. I'm not saying it will crash always, it will base, yet there's no sign that it's prepared to base presently. There is a gamble of it plunging somewhat more, so you need to be exceptionally cautious while exchanging SPY and checking it out. Thus, we'll see where this thing winds up basing at. I would like to take note of there's a gamble of dropping somewhat more. Along these lines, be ready for that. Same thing goes for the QQQ. We just lost 436 at key help. In this way, the following objective will be right down to 434. That will be our next basic help. In the event that you lose that, watch 432 and 430 in general. The QQQ is looking a smidgen more negative, got this enormous bar to the drawback, and we're moving toward this next help, 435. Thus, we're looking somewhat more explanatory. We're seeing some shortcoming after this liquidity snatch. We saw this thing pop with this wick in the first part of the day since they were preparing for this dump, and that is where the landfill has come. Thus, 435 is on the table now. CPI is somewhat more sizzling than anticipated. The market is excessively disturbed about that, and this is additionally getting hauled down to some extent because of Nvda. Nvda retested 20 EMA. It's plunging a little. We will watch 834 as key help. Could let as far as possible backfall down there and retest it. You lose this, watch 830, and in the long run, 825 will be our next target, and afterward we have even lower upholds underneath that. Along these lines, we will watch to perceive how well this holds. In the event that you lose 820, we could get extremely near the lower 800s, have 805. This resembles exceptionally near where our 200 EMA was. In any case, similar to I said previously, Nvda is showing some shortcoming. We will watch to perceive how well it holds this 834 region. On the off chance that we lose this, watch 830. In the long run, we could be tumbling to 825 and 820. Thus, you need to be extremely aware of this. Simply realize that Nvda is showing shortcoming which could haul down the QQQ. Along these lines, if it's not too much trouble, watch out. For Aapl, we have obstruction at 169, and our help will be around 168 level. We'll need to perceive how well we hold this. There is a gamble of this plunging somewhat more. We're actually looking sort of feeble. Thus, this could drag the market down somewhat more. Okay, folks, so we're seeing signs the market could see a touch more since CPI was more sizzling than anticipated. All in all, this could dial Tesla back a little, all right? This could make Tesla plunge significantly more to the backings I called out. Nonetheless, Tesla will ultimately base and simply realize that Tesla is showing more strength than the general business sectors. It's not plunging as hard. Thus, we will give Tesla some time and we'll find out how things turn out. However, simply know and recall, CPI was somewhat more sizzling than anticipated, not the best of information for the Fed. This boosts the Fed to be more hawkish later on. Okay, folks, I'll make one more video about Elon Musk and the others somewhat later. However, I simply need to zero in on CPI until further notice. I'll see you all on the following one. Much obliged to you all such a huge amount for tuning in. Have an extraordinary day and prepare for some fascinating unpredictability. Much appreciated once more, folks, and harmony out.